Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shanti Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shanti Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhinas Santo Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet Sarvastaratu Durgani Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu Sarvas Sadbuddhimapnoto Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We'll continue with the study of how the three gunas affect our life and our personality. So we'll begin today with verse number 26. So this set of three verses discuss the nature of the doer of action. All the activities we engage in, we do it with the idea, with the awareness, with the identity that I am doing it. So the I, the doer, is called in Sanskrit karta. So how is the doer of action influenced by the three gunas? Verse number 26. Mukta sango anaham vadi dhrutyutsaha samanvitaha siddhya siddhyor nirvikaraha karta satvika uchyate. An agent who is free from attachment, non-egoistic, endued with fortitude and enthusiasm, and unaffected by success or failure is called Sattvika. So again, this verse holds a mirror before our mind's eye so that we can look into it and see whether any of these qualities and to what extent are present in our own life. When we do all the work that we do, when whether any of these qualities are present. So first, an agent who is free from attachment. Now we may love our work, but how attached we are to the work. Now the problem is this. At a very superficial level, attachment and love look almost same. That's the difficulty. And so, how do we distinguish between love and attachment? Among the things that we can do to distinguish between them is to see, first of all, what is prominent in my awareness, in the sense that if I'm attached to something or someone, then the I is more prominent. That is, this object, this work, this person, this place belongs to me. I own it. And so it's I, and the sense of ownership is very prominent in every attachment. In contrast, where there is love, I is not prominent at all. It's all about you. It's all about the object of love. And so, if I'm attached to the work, then what is important to me is how I'm affected by the work. So if the work fails, let's say if something goes wrong with the work and no one notices it, and in fact people praise you for it because they do not know something has gone wrong with the work, you'll be happy because you have received praise because it's all about me. On the other hand, sometimes the work, if I truly love the work, then it's the success or failure of the work that will be prominent to me, not so much about how I'm affected by it. And so what is prominent, whether it's me or the object, that determines whether it's attachment or love. We see that even in the relationships that we have in life. True love, in this highest sense, would mean that I want the person I love, the person I'm related to be happy. Even at the cost of, even if I have to suffer, I want the object of my love to be happy. That's like the highest form of love. So sometimes when we say, I love God, oftentimes that love can get evaporated very quickly if I'm passing through a prolonged period of suffering and none of my prayers seem to be answered. And then people feel like, what's the use of loving God? God, I loved you so much, I prayed for you so much, you did nothing for me. And then people, they get disillusioned. So again, there, I was really in love with myself. And I was using God as a means to make me happy. And the moment God stopped solving my problems, or at least the way I saw it, I say, I don't need God. Because there, really, this is an attachment to myself. On the other hand, if I love God, what happens to me is totally irrelevant. Because my whole being should be so much immersed in God that I will have no time to think of myself. So as long as my I is strong, now, that doesn't mean that we don't love God. Yes, our love for God is sincere. This is not to question the sincerity of our love. But what it does mean is, it's a point of reflection that while my love for God is genuine, it needs to be more intensified yet. In other words, my love for God has not reached a point where I have even forgotten myself. So my awareness of I is still very prominent in me. And so, most of the things that we deal with in life, whether it's people, places, things, or the work that we do, and even God, who is an important presence in the lives of devotees. All of these relationships that we have are actually a mixture. It's a mixture of attachment and love. And all of the pain that we experience in any of these relationships, that pain comes from attachment. And all of the joy that we experience through all of these connections, that comes from love. So all the stress and anxiety and worry and fear that comes to me as a result of my work comes from my attachment. All the joy that I get from my work, that comes through love. And so what we need to do is to find a way to separate it out. Sometimes the example given in our books is about if you have a fine sand and sugar, a mixture of sand and sugar, and you leave a battalion of ants there. The ants will only pick up the sugar and leave sand behind. So we need to do a little bit like that. So right now, inside there's a heap of attachment mixed with love. We need to kind of separate it out, just pull love out of it and get rid of attachment. And the more we succeed in doing so, we will find there will be greater and greater joy and meaning in our life. And all of the negativities will become less and less and less. So that's the challenge. And so a sattvika doer of action, the more I have sattva in me, this attachment will go. Is non-egoistic. Again, for a devotee of God, the idea that I am doing it will not be there. Now for devotee, oftentimes the idea is God is doing everything. I am only an instrument of God. So seeing oneself as an instrument is a good practice for trying to get the ego out of the way. Now oftentimes as devotees we do say, oh, the Lord is doing everything, it's all the mother's will. We say that, but every time we say that, we have to be a little bit on our guard to make sure that it's not just words. I mean, it's not very difficult to say, everything happens by God's will. Well, that's easy to say that. But do I really mean it? How often do I remember that everything that is happening in my life, good or bad, pleasant or not, happens by God's will? If I'm aware of that presence, aware of that truth, most of the time, then it makes sense for me to say it happens by God's will. Otherwise, these words don't really mean much. One who is free from attachment, non-egoistic, ahamvadi, egoistic, anahamvadi, non-egoistic. Dhruti utsaha samanvitaha. So whose personality is filled with dhruti. Dhruti is translated here as fortitude. It means tenacity, willpower. Oftentimes we might find that people take up some activities and then after some time they just lose interest in it. If it doesn't bring them what they thought it would bring them, or it doesn't bring them instant results, it's like, oh yeah, I'm getting bored, I want to leave it. So that's the lacking in tenacity. But sattvika person is one, once the person doesn't do anything recklessly, but once a course of action is selected, a sattvika person would have that tenacity, that perseverance to hold on to that course of action. That is what dhruti means. And utsaha. Utsaha means enthusiasm. So how enthusiastic we are in the work that we do. And that enthusiasm can come in any work only if we love it. We see that. Wherever there is love, there's a lot of utsaha, lot of enthusiasm. When that love goes away, then things get very boring. Things get very monotonous. And unaffected by success or failure. This is probably one of the most difficult things. A favorite verse of mine to deal with situations like this, which I've quoted often before, comes from that book Panchadashi. And it simply says this, that what will happen will happen. What will not happen will not happen. Knowing this, wise ones become free from the poison of anxiety and free from all illusion. So the idea is this, a person who is filled with sattva will work hard, will try his or her best, give your best shot at doing anything. But after having done your best, to have the ability then to step back and say, I've done my best, what will happen will happen. So success or failure, I can remain unaffected by success or failure only if I'm non-egoistic. Because if I'm egoistic, then success or failure is going to affect me. Either way, if it's successful, I can go over the top and feel how great I am, how wonderful I am. Or if it's failure, then I'm just going to be depressed. Perhaps not able to take the criticism from my peers if something fails. Now, this is not to suggest that success should not make us happy or failure should not make us miserable. That's not the point. Of course, we are human beings. A table never becomes happy or miserable. We don't want to become lifeless entities like this. So this is not to suggest that we should never experience joy or sorrow in life. This is very natural. So if you feel happy sometimes and if you feel unhappy sometimes, don't think there is anything wrong with you. That's okay. What's problematic? If my being happy or unhappy becomes so overwhelming that I'm not able to carry on with my work, that I'm not able to carry out my duties and responsibilities, because either of this, the joy and sorrow, have completely immobilized me, then it's a problem. Otherwise, we have seen in our lives, a little bit of happiness, a little bit of pain, we can get over it, we can manage it, we can control it. It's fully within our control. Only when it crosses the tipping point, either way, being too happy or being too miserable is a problem in spiritual life. In fact, among the qualities necessary to develop love for God, Ramanuja, great Acharya, Vedanta Acharya, he lists 7 qualities necessary to develop love for God. And among those 7 qualities are these 2. It's called anavasada and anuddharsha. Anavasada means being depressed, being like totally in the dump, so to speak. And anavasada means the opposite of that. So preventing myself from being completely immobilized by suffering and misery. But the opposite also, anuddharsha. Uddharsha means just going over the top. If something wonderful happens in life and I start yelling and jumping and run out into the street and tell everyone what's happened. We don't do that, I'm just kind of exaggerating it. But if we are not able to, this is important. If I'm not able to control my joy, I will not be able to control my misery. So if I want to have the ability to, no matter how terrible something happens in my life, if I want to have the ability to have control over my pain, I must have control over my joy too. It works both ways. I can't say, well, if I'm happy, what's the need to control it? The need to control it is if I cannot control that, I cannot control this. So that is what is meant by saying, who is unaffected by success or failure. So please keep keep this in mind, what unaffected means. Means not getting so overwhelmed as to be immobilized by it. So all of these qualities are the one belong to a person who is free, or who is in whom the quality of sattva is dominant. So let me read it again. An agent who is free from attachment, non-egoistic, endued with fortitude and enthusiasm, and unaffected by success or failure is called sattvika. Verse 27. Ragi karma phala prepsuhu lubdho himsatmako shuchihi harsha shokan vitaf karta rajasaf parikirtitaha. An agent who is interested, desirous of the fruit of action, greedy, malevolent, unclean, and subject to elation and dejection is declared to be rajasika. So again, you can see it's very obvious, the distinction from the sattvika one. First of all, ragi means one who is attached. Here is kind of put in a little mild way, who is interested, but actually who is attached. Raga means attachment. So an agent who is attached, desirous of the fruit of action. Again, it's, well, clearly, if I'm attached to the work, I'm attached to the fruit of action also. And if I'm attached to the fruit of action, then at the very least, the fruit is going to be either success or failure. And if I'm attached to it, then that success or failure is going to bring me either joy or sorrow. Greedy. Lubdha, that is the Sanskrit word here. Again, greedy. The one thing that we may have noticed in life, that greed is such a thing that it can never be satisfied. If many of us might think, if I only had $1 million, I'll be the happiest person. Or hopefully, but maybe not. Because once you get $1 million, then you look around and say, well, there are people who have several million and I have nothing compared to that. And the thing was this, if $1 million were a sure recipe for happiness, you wouldn't have had any millionaires who were totally miserable. Unfortunately, go and ask any millionaire. Well, they may not tell you if you are not very close to them, but or if you have any millionaire friends, or if you know anyone who knows a millionaire, we know from history, we know from the lives of our own contemporaries that money alone cannot bring happiness. There's no doubt. This doesn't mean that a millionaire cannot be happy. I'm not suggesting that. It's possible to be very happy and be a millionaire. But that's not because of your millions. So the cause of your happiness cannot simply be wealth. And therefore greed is a disease in some ways. Malevolent. Malevolent means, the word here is himsatmakaha, that if what I am greedy for, what I desire, if someone gets in the way or puts some obstacle in the way, this person will not hesitate to even indulge in violence, indulge in hurting whoever comes in the way of fulfilling his or her greed. Unclean, the word here is ashuchihi. And cleanliness in Vedanta text often always means both external and internal cleanliness. So a person who is, and sometimes you will see that, someone may be so immersed in trying to achieve, so greedy to achieve whatever they want, they may totally ignore even external cleanliness. And of course, internal cleanliness is already out of the way, out of the window because of greed and ego and attachment. Subject to elation and dejection. Again, very obvious. Harsha shoka anvitaha. If I'm greedy, if I'm attached to the fruit of action, then obviously success or failure is going to affect me very much. That is what is meant by subject to elation and dejection is declared by Rajasika. Again, we can look at our own lives and see that as we go about carrying our duties and responsibilities in life, how many of these characteristics match our own profile? Verse 28. Ayukta prakrita stabdhaha Shatho naishkritiko lasaha Vishadi dirghasutri cha Karta tamasa uchyate. Now when tamas is predominant in a person, how does it affect that person? How does that person do his or her actions? An agent who is unsteady, again, who cannot hold on to any activity, who may do something with a whim and leave it. If I have 10 unfinished projects, I start and I leave. That shows lack of steadiness. Vulgar, prakritaha. It's a very interesting word, prakrita. And the word vulgar in English, of course, is used in many different contexts. The way it is used here is this, that in any situation in life, and in different contexts, how do I understand and interpret things that are happening in me and around me? And there is a very ordinary way of looking at things, and that's what vulgar here means. That is, it's so ordinary that it's something with the person of the least intellectual and emotional intelligence, or someone who is very immature, or someone who cannot think of anything better or higher would think. That is a vulgar way of thinking and understanding and interpreting. And we know every little thing that we see, there is a higher way of looking at it. There are more subtler nuances to everything that is happening around us. So vulgar here means that one who, and we can see that oftentimes maturity does not automatically come with age. There are various kinds of maturity. There is intellectual maturity, there is emotional maturity as well. And we will see that physically we all grow older. That's something that nature takes care of. That people don't want to get old, but you cannot stop it. The other thing, that along with physical aging, physical maturity, the emotional maturity, the intellectual maturity, the moral maturity doesn't often keep pace with physical growth. And then it's a problem. So prakritaha really also means here that someone who may have been older in age, but in every other respect has remained very immature. Stabdhaha, arrogant. So people who are predominantly arrogant whenever they are busy doing any work, arrogant to everyone who is connected with that work. Deceptive, again, if sometimes people falsify results. Let's say your work is not going the way you thought it would, and you're afraid your boss may be upset, or it may have repercussions to your position in your company, and then you falsify your results. What that would be, any kind of a deception is a result of tamas. Overbearing. Overbearing here, the word here is naishkritikaha. Naishkritikaha means very malicious. Again, so such a person would not hesitate to do things to hurt someone else. And sometimes to hurt someone else even without gaining anything thereby. Vishadi, alasaha. Alasaha means lazy, indolent. So laziness is clearly a tamasic trait. Vishadi, despondent. Now, sometimes we might find in our lives the tendency to be negative about everything. That whenever anything, if I approach any work with the idea, oh, I know it's not going to work, or it's going to be terrible. Well, it could be terrible, but to start any activity with that negative mindset, that is what is meant here by this vishadi. That is, and that's very harmful. Harmful for one's own peace of mind, but also it affects the quality of work. Way back in the 60s, I think, there was a set of books that Norman Vincent Peale brought, and they became very famous, and a lot of people found benefit from them. And his emphasis was on this positive mental attitude. Now, just having a positive mental attitude does not itself guarantee success. But what it does do is it puts us in a better frame of mind, which can contribute toward the success of the work. And so we have to be very careful that sometimes due to our own past experience, we might become so pessimistic. Suppose we have had a series of failures, and then you start some new project. It's understandable why you might not be so hopeful. It's like, oh, I'm a failure and this is not going to work. That's where you need that enthusiasm that we saw in the Sattvika person. That no matter how often I have failed, can I again resume maybe the same project or some other project, again with the hope, I'm going to try it again and make it work. Something that many of us have been told since childhood, that failure is a stepping stone to success. So if we only recognize that there is not a single person in this entire world, even those who we see as very successful people, there is not a single person who can say that I have never failed. So just because we have failed in something, or even if we had series of failures, that by no means that we are not going to be successful. What it does mean, though, that every time I fail, if I just get too despondent about it, then I'm not going to learn anything from it. But every time I fail, I look into the causes of my failure, try to find why it is that I failed, and then make a second attempt trying to eliminate the possible causes that may have led to that failure. That's the way. So if every failure teaches me something, it makes me more aware of what things need to be changed, then every failure, then it becomes a stepping stone to success. But if there is no examination of why that failing occurred, then it's not a stepping stone to success. I'm just on the same stone. I'm just standing on that same step. I'm not going up at all. That's the idea. Dirgha Sutri, procrastinating. Shankaracharya, in his commentary on this word, Dirgha Sutri means that what can be done today or tomorrow If I take 1 month to do it, then I'm a Dirgha Sutri. That's procrastination. And so, if we have a tendency within us to keep on postponing things, that means a little bit of tamas is present. Now, it's possible. This is not to say that we should never postpone anything. It's possible that sometimes there may be so many things to attend to that it may not be physically possible for you to attend it. So, postponing anything in itself doesn't make it tamasic. But postponing something, even when I had the ability, the time and energy to do it now, and in spite of that I postpone it, then it means procrastination. So an agent who is unsteady, vulgar, arrogant, deceptive, overbearing, indolent, despondent, and procrastinating is said to be tamasic. So let me read these 3 verses once again. So kind of a summary of the 3 kinds of doers of action that Krishna says possible. An agent who is free from attachment, non-egoistic, endued with fortitude and enthusiasm, and unaffected by success or failure is called sattvika. An agent who is interested, desirous of the fruit of action, greedy, malevolent, unclean, and subject to elation and dejection is declared to be rajasika. An agent who is unsteady, vulgar, arrogant, deceptive, overbearing, indolent, despondent, and procrastinating is said to be tamasika. Now, very likely, if we connect all of these descriptions to our own life and look into the mirror of our heart, it's possible that we might find a few qualities from each of these verses present in us, which is okay, which is probably inevitable, considering that all these 3, sattva, rajas, tamas, are present in us. So, it's not something to be surprised at if we find something from verse 26, something from 27, something from 28 present in us. The next thing to see is which of these qualities are predominant. And then the goal, of course, for a spiritual seeker is to try to bring ourselves as close to the description of the sattvika person as we can. So identify the qualities which are described here as belonging to tamas and rajas and try to find how can I get rid of them. So this is a two-way thing. Look at the qualities in sattva and see how to acquire them. Look at these 2 qualities, and if you find any of these present in you, ask yourself, how can I try to minimize it? And the more we try to then do this, the better our spiritual life will be. So Krishna is giving all these descriptions. Again, as I said last time, that this is like providing a mirror before us. So Krishna is saying, these are the possible qualities. These are the kinds of people who have these qualities. Now look in your heart and see where you fit in. And then he says, the ideal is to come as close to the sattvika person as possible. Do you have any questions, comments, thoughts, ideas on these 3 verses that we studied today? Yeah.
So Swamiji, when this text was written, the concept of work was perhaps different than what we think of as work today. So could you say a little bit more about, I know we've talked about this before, but could you say a little bit more about the definition of what qualifies as work?
Well, I don't think in its essential nature the work was different then than it's today. I mean, in those days they had to, if the chariot breaks down and they had to fix the chariot, we may have to fix the car today. So I mean, people were still people. They had families. they had duties towards their family, towards their community, towards their neighborhood. They were also seekers of God. So I don't think in the essential nature of work, things were different. But of course, superficially, the society has changed. But I don't think there has been much change as far as the attitude to work. And the certain kinds of work they had to do, many of them had to do, even not way back, even as far back as even say 200 years ago. I was reading John Adams after his term as president was over. Then he went back home, and then oftentimes he was just going up and fixing the roof of his home. That was a work. There was a family work that he was doing. So, but today, of course, we wouldn't think any of our ex-presidents would go and fix anyone's roof. So things have changed, obviously. But I think the essential need to carry out your duties and responsibilities, that has not changed.
Swamiji, in the course of the Gita, do we get a sense that Arjuna has himself been able to develop more sattvic traits and lose some of the tamas or rajasic?
There is no way to know, except that towards the end, Arjuna does say, Nashto moha smritir labdhva, all my confusion is gone, now I know what to do. And we know he did then. He didn't know what he should do. By the end of the teaching, he had no doubt about what his duty was. So some of his doubts were clearly resolved. There is no way to know whether Arjuna had become an enlightened being by then. I would suspect probably not. That's just a guess. Actually, in the Mahabharata, and I mentioned this before, he probably didn't become enlightened. Because in the Mahabharata, after the war was over, and the wicked people have been vanquished, and the Pandavas are ruling, and it's just fine. And then there is a story in the Mahabharata which says, then Arjuna goes to Krishna and then says, remember at the beginning of the war, I had this confusion, and then you told me this, and could you please tell that to me again? I completely forgot. He said there was so much, really thousands of soldiers all around, and this profound philosophy being given, and this person is like, what shall I do? Shall I fight or not? So his immediate problem was solved. As a result of hearing this, problem was, okay, I have no doubt now, and you do it. But then afterwards, after peace has come back and the war is over, and someone like, what did he say? Sometimes you can see that happening in our own lives. Sometimes you go and get your doubt resolved, and when immediately after that your question is answered, it just makes sense. I'd say, okay, that makes sense. And then you go home and think about it and say, what did they say? A little bit like that. And so Arjuna then asks Krishna, could you please tell me again what you told me at the beginning of the war? And of course, Krishna wasn't reading from his notes or anything. So Krishna said, if you don't remember it, I don't remember it also. But then Krishna said something, that you had a question and I answered your question then. If you have any question now, you can ask me afresh. And so then Arjuna asks him a question, and then Krishna gives him a teaching. Now that teaching that Krishna gave, that section of the Mahabharata has become another Gita that's called Anu Gita. Anu literally means small, tiny. Like Anu is also the word used for atom. So it's not as big as this big Gita. It points at two things, as I said. One thing is, it doesn't look like Arjuna became enlightened, otherwise he wouldn't have had this question. But secondly also, that there is not just one fixed answer to one fixed question. We don't really, I have not studied the Anugita, so I cannot go into any greater detail about it. But even if Arjuna had asked the exact same question to Krishna after the war, it's unlikely that Krishna's answer would have been exactly same as you find it in the Gita. Because again, when the context changes, when the person who is asking is coming from a different place, the answer would suit the need of that student. And so if you get, that book isn't that popular, that section called Anugita. But if you're curious, if you're interested, try to find a copy and then look at it. And then maybe in some future time we can do it on our Wednesday class as well. If by the time we finish this book, if you're not enlightened, then we can study the Anugita. Anything else? Okay, so we will stop here today, and then when we meet next week, we'll begin with verse number 29. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. Friday, 24th, we have the Shivaratri Puja. The puja will begin at 6:30, expected to go around 9:30. And as I mentioned last Sunday, those of you who would like to make an offering to Shiva, it's expected that you observe a fast on that day. So have a good dinner on Thursday night, tomorrow night. And after you wake up on Friday, until the puja is over, try to remain on just liquid and fruits. If you succeed in remaining simply on liquid and fruits on Friday, then when you come for puja, you'll have a special privilege of making that snana on Shivalinga. If you cannot observe a fast, you're still welcome. You will still be able to do the flower offering at the end of the puja. And after the puja is over, there will be plenty of prasad to eat. So see if you can manage the fasting part of it. And on Sunday we have another puja that is in celebration of Sri Ramakrishna's birthday. So 2 pujas coming up. The Friday puja will be in the evening, 6:30 to 9:30. The Sunday puja is in the morning, 10:30 till 1 o'clock. So you're welcome for both of these pujas. And because of the puja, this Saturday we will not have the arati and meditation. And next Wednesday we will meet again to continue with the study of the Gita. Let's conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, Peace be unto all.